Hey everyone, today we're going to be going over 5 common misconceptions about independent filmmaking. How's it going, guys? My name is Jacob True and I am one of the founders of the Central Valley Film Project. One cannot argue that video is not present throughout all of our lives. It's present in our social media, in our news outlets, in our films, and it's something that we consume on a daily basis. Because film is so present in our lives day to day, it's very easy to think that we're much more knowledgeable than we actually are. What this means is that it's one of the most misunderstood mediums out there, despite the fact that we all see it so often. Because of this, I thought it'd be fun to go over a few common misconceptions that people have when they're first entering independent filmmaking. These are a few things that I've noticed throughout my time that I see people commonly bring up or struggle with, and I'm listing them out just because these are the ones I hear most often. This is by no means an end-all be-all list. I'm sure there are more you could add or you could argue to take away. However, this is my list and I feel like this is something that's pretty well-rounded and something that we've all run into when entering filmmaking. Now with that being said, let's jump straight into it. One of the most common misconceptions that I see about independent filmmaking is that it's a relatively quick process. Now what I mean by that is we all know the big blockbuster films take a while to make. However, a short film should take no time at all. I can knock out an 8-page script in a day. What's the worst that could happen? If you're an independent filmmaker, you know there's a lot that can happen. When filming a script, it is very easy to fall into the pitfall of, oh, this is only a few pages, I should be able to knock it out in no time. However, it is very critical to understand what is in those pages. Are you just filming a dialogue scene between two people talking at a table? Are you filming an action scene that's going to involve a bunch of locations and a lot of extras? When you're first getting into film, you don't necessarily ask yourself these questions. You just think, it's only like a few minutes long, it's not going to take too much time at all. But in reality, the process can be much more complex than just the length of a video. With that being said, you should always ask yourself what you need in a production and what's going to be involved to get that production done. We actually have a video on this very topic that we would love for you guys to check out if you have never asked yourself what you need when making a film. So in short, make sure that you understand that this is going to be an arduous process. There is so much planning that goes into a film. There's so much production that goes into film. There's so much editing that goes into a film, and it is just very time consuming. A 10-minute short film could easily take months depending on the scale and the scope of the project. So always be prepared to take a step back and to really dissect what the film's needs are and to be able to meet those needs in a really efficient and justified way. The second misconception that is commonly found in independent filmmaking is that you need expensive equipment in order to be successful. Another very common misconception in the world of independent filmmaking is that you need expensive equipment to make a good film. Now this is just absolutely untrue, because a great filmmaker can make a great film regardless of the resources at hand. A lot of people think if you just have a rigged out, expensive camera, that's gonna be able to make a good film in of itself. I'm sure we've all walked into a movie theater and paid good money to see a movie that has cost tens of millions of dollars to make and walked out thinking, So just because you have a high budget, it doesn't mean you have a good film. And just because you have a low budget doesn't mean you have a bad film. However, I've done camera tests myself, comparing my first camera setup ever, which was fairly cheap, opposed to my current camera setup, which is fairly expensive. You can look between the two cameras and it'll be hard to spot the difference unless you have a trained eye. And the reason for this being is that I have taken the time and the energy to really train myself in cinematography to where regardless of what camera I'm shooting on, I'm gonna be able to make the most out of it. Absolutely successful films such as Tangerine and Unsane were completely shot on iPhones, which just goes to show that you can do a lot with a little. Now, of course, it is very difficult to shoot a film with just an iPhone, and I'm not saying you have to go with the bare minimum either. You just have to find a balance that fits you. You just really need to assess what your skills are, what your needs are, and that's gonna be able to determine what kind of a film you're going to be able to make at that given time. So with that being said, really focus on the skill level and on the craft, because regardless of what camera you're working on, you're gonna be able to make it look like cinema, regardless of whatever you're working on. The third common misconception about independent filmmaking is that you need connections in order to make a great film. And what I mean by that is people often think you have to have a connection to a cool location, to top-level acting talent, to top-level crew members, to top-level equipment in order to make something legitimate in the independent film world. However, again, this is absolutely untrue. If you have just a camera, a microphone, and a couple of friends, you can make something spectacular. A great example of this is the film Clerks, which was shot on a penny budget with barely any money to go into the production. But despite this, Kevin Smith was able to pull in a few of his friends who were passionate about the project, used the gas station that he worked at, and made a very effective movie. The movie made back 10 times its budget because of the fact that he kept costs so low. Kevin Smith was able to make an amazing film with just things that were surrounding himself. Additionally, when I had first gotten back into filmmaking after having a short hiatus, I only had access to people I knew. However, despite the fact that no one had any direct film experience, everyone was extremely passionate about the film, and thus it came out really good, and in fact won an award at the Modesto 48-hour film competition. A lot of people were engaged and humored by the film, despite the fact that it was just me and some of my friends making it. So with absolutely minimal connections, we were able to make a pretty successful film. So never feel limited by the fact that you don't have access to the coolest locations or top level talent. If you create a story that's surrounding the resources that you already have access to, chances are that you could make a very strong film with just what you have. Take the time to really take an inventory of what you have access to in terms of actors, props, costumes, locations. And if you take the time to really understand what you have access to, you'll be able to make an amazing film with what you have. The fourth misconception that people have about independent film is that this is going to be their big break. Now, what I mean by that is people will dedicate their entire life into just one film. They will be spending day and night just grinding and working on this one project, neglecting their mental health and the people around them. They'll have these illusions of grandeur, believing if I could just get this film done and get it in front of some sort of person in Los Angeles, I'll be the next big film director. I'll be shaking hands with Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese because I have put my heart and soul into this specific project. Very few people, and I mean very few, are ever picked up for film. Usually, filmmakers have to take charge and make their own films and make their own connections and push themselves forward. We just have to take a moment and be honest with ourselves and understand that we're never gonna have a big break moment. You're gonna be making films for a long time, working your way up the ladder until eventually your films are just reaching a wider audience. It's only perceived as a big break amongst the public because that's the first time they've heard of you. However, behind the scenes, you've been working to that moment for a long time, and the same goes for any popular filmmaker today. No one's gonna hand you $1 million budget. No one's gonna hand you a highly talented crew. You have to go out there and earn it yourself through multiple films. Additionally, don't let any single film consume your life. It is very important as artists to preserve our mental health because making art is a very demanding process. So to best protect ourselves, really just hedge your bets and understand that, okay, this is not my identity. And once you take that step back, you'll really be able to understand what film is all about because we want this to be a dream, not a nightmare. So if you go all in on a project, it's very easy to lose it all. Therefore, hedge your bets, take healthy steps at a time, and you'll work your way up to being a really popular, really successful filmmaker. Finally, the fifth common misconception people have about independent filmmaking is that a longer film is a better film. Now this may seem completely left field, like what? What do you mean that a longer film is a better film? Who says that? However, amongst a lot of filmmakers, it is insanely common for me to hear about projects that are spanning 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Now, if you have a plan set and you're an experienced filmmaker and you know exactly what's gonna go into that project, that's another thing. Go ahead and make a 20, 30, 40 minute film because you've worked your way up to that point. However, there are people that I know that haven't even made an 8-minute film and they're immediately trying to jump into feature-length films without having anything under their belt. And every time a filmmaker does that, where they hop into a film that is extremely long, extremely demanding, and they've never really hopped into an even mid-sized project before, I could bet money every single time that they are not even gonna finish the film. And who could blame them? It's a difficult process, and it is gonna absolutely burn you out if you are not ready for that. But to really fully understand this, you have to ask yourself, how come filmmakers always wanna make a longer film? How come they think it's more prestigious or more effective to make a 20-minute film as opposed to a 5 or 10-minute film? Well, the reason for this is they feel like they're gonna be able to make a more of a deep connection with the audience because the audience is spending more time with the characters, they get to develop plot lines a little bit more, and things of that nature. However, you can really affect an audience in a very short amount of time. Do I even have to bring up the sequence we're all thinking of? You know what sequence I'm thinking of. That sequence was completed in under 5 minutes. Additionally, you could look at almost any Pixar short, and you're gonna be able to see that they are able to make very unique, strong characters, deep emotional connections to their audience in virtually no time at all. That just shows that at the highest level, you do not need to spend a long time with your audience to have a deep connection with your audience. It is honestly a better exercise to try and compact all of that emotion and character into a shorter time span, because you're gonna be able to more effectively and more efficiently tell your stories. It is very tempting to want to be ambitious and go big and make your first feature. However, you don't want to jump into that. Take that step back. Really work yourself out creatively by forcing yourself to make a smaller film and seeing if you can make someone really emotionally resonate with that film despite its shorter length. It is absolutely possible. It has been done before, and I challenge you guys to do it at home for yourselves. And with that, those are 5 common misconceptions about independent filmmaking. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you want to be the first to hear about our videos being released, subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you want to engage with us further, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook with the handle @CVFP209. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.